Dr. Casberry here. I'm back with some questions from our students. We've come 2143, Digital Media Literacy. We're looking at our week 1 readings. You all have come up with a phenomenal starter set of discussion questions based on our readings. And so it's great to see this early use of the texts. We can't stress it enough, but the investment in ourselves, right? It's a cognitive investment. It's an intellectual investment, but we're getting rewarded along the way. So it's not just a reward in the form of answers. We're getting some course credit there. And so we want to move along. We had some great opening questions from Val, and I'm going to shift gears, take a couple of questions from Gracie. It'll be exciting to see what she has written here for us. I love that you all are picking up on the invitation to write about not only the readings in a given week, but also if we have maybe separate videos, right? Video prompts and things like that for you to sample. It's a great opportunity, and many of you took advantage of that. So Gracie starts with reaction to the Twitter tutorial video that we set up. I think one element of digital media literacy is recognizing the depth and the breadth of options, of ways to engage digitally. And I think we're familiar with the ones that are most popular, right? And our goal is to just kind of deepen the pool, right? The body of knowledge that we have about what we can do with media in this course. But Gracie has a question about the Twitter tutorial video, and is what specific feature helps with finding related topics to your brand or account that aims toward and involves the cities around you, all right? Nice question. And I want to be able to tackle this at a rudimentary level. Experience tells me we're all over the map in terms of familiarity. And let's not confuse talking about one form of social media with a kind of master message that you should feel left out if that's not one you prefer to engage in. You know, the whole purpose of having multiple options in a free market society is that we gain an advantage anytime we're gaining familiarity. So, in terms of the question, what specific features helps with finding related topics to your brand or account that aims toward and involves cities around you? At the most rudimentary level, I would remind us of hashtags, right? They're invented and they proliferate for a reason. The hashtag is intended to draw you in, and we can think about a hashtag just like you think about keywords, right? A keyword, let's say if you find a journal article, or maybe you read a healthy news piece, there might be keywords underneath the title, an author, right? Perhaps underneath a byline or an abstract. And that's to help orient you, to say like, here are the main themes that this is about. And hashtags can work the same way. It's stressing that this is what this is about, or here's what I'm trying to link it to. And so that's why it's an incredibly valuable tool on not only on Twitter, but as you know, on Instagram, on other interactive, searchable social media. And let's also remember that creating threads that you can return to, right? So you're orienting certain types of topical discussion threads in certain ways with intent, right? Starting a thread. Or engaging in someone else's thread, right? And there could be purpose and intent behind that. It's going to allow you to come back to it. And then sometimes, as much as we will maybe speak to controversy with regards to algorithms and social media, following algorithmic suggestions can be a helpful tool for us, all right? Because it can open up the avenues to contacts, whether it's a human contact or maybe a business, that you didn't know existed, that you wouldn't find without the algorithms helping you. So for example, if I'm in my metropolitan area, and I'll use personal experience here, I've used algorithmic suggestions to be able to locate additional places of shared interest in my immediate geographical area, whether it's restaurants or public areas, or it could be people. And so those are some uses there. Now, here's a couple of questions from our introduction of course reading. Oh, introduction of course readings video. I see what's going on here. The initial video, that this is exciting. This is a first to get questions on that. First question: how does this class contribute towards the communication, media, and ethics major? And ideally, I think watching the video helps to make those connections. But just really quick, this we could see whether in hindsight or know in advance that the themes and readings and assignments in this course definitely lend themselves toward the tier of emphasis in our major that is media studies, and also the tier of emphasis that is social media. And sometimes just the training that comes along with it also lends itself to that third tier in our major, public relations, right? Which is a broad, extended tier. Which book will blend with internet culture from our course? I believe one we're coming to late, it's just out of reach, is Spreadable Media. Looking for value in a networked society, networked culture, from Henry Jenkins, Sam Ford, and Joshua Green. That's going to be a book we revisit a couple of times, and so don't panic if you don't get very far into it. You're going to have a chance to revisit some of that later on. Good questions. In the popular culture book, Marcel Danisi's book, we'll revisit that as well in a couple of different classes. And so, I think that's an invitation to be able to slow down sometimes and just take your time reading one chapter. Or if you're really excited, keep reading. There's no reason to stop, right? All right. Let's see. Let me shift gears. Yahira has some questions, and I want to get into them. I mean, how many am I going to tackle? I don't know. These are great questions. Thank you so much for your attentiveness here. So let me begin with the second question she writes. I'm having a difficult time differentiating between the two sets of writing styles. Can one not use both styles cohesively? In an ideal world, maybe. No one else will tell you that. It seems that they each focus on two separate aspects of writing, one style and one tone. Bottom line, here's where we don't want to get hung up. We just want to embrace the ride, right? And that is, anytime you're introduced to a particular writing style, familiarity is more important early on than mastery. Does that make sense? So familiarity, more important than mastery. We gain familiarity through repetition. One form of repetition is the repeated taking in, meaning like making it a point to read parts of it, a few times a week. Like work through as much of the book as you can. Here's another way. When we talk about repetition, let's widen our net. Trial and error over time, right? In your various courses, in your various assignments. And it's okay, right? Being aware of that, receiving feedback from your different instructors. Do you use the Writing Center, right? We have a phenomenal online Writing Center where you can get trained feedback, eyes on your work, and timely feedback at that. And so what we can think about writing well in the 21st century, the Spencer text is, it's a lean book, and that's intentional. It's intentionally brief because it's giving us a crash course. It's brief to match our brevity because we're in an accelerated cycle. And so we're trying to kind of align those things in a way that's helpful, right? Good question. For clarification, in chapter 1 of Pop Culture, Danisi defines a subculture as, quote, a culture that keeps itself separate from the mainstream, offering an alternative lifestyle to its members, end quote, from page 14. Is that not what the countercultural movement did? Yes. Counterculture was about kind of refracting, right? And kind of segmenting away from mainstream, maybe ideas and cultural practices and so on. Follow-up question. Denisi specifies that only the punk culture was considered a subculture. Was that because the counterculture aimed to enhance its current culture while the punk culture completely went against it? Yeah, these are both interesting, fascinating, distinct eras to study, like socially, politically, culturally. It's an intermingling of those three highly interrelated categories. But what I can think of when I picture what they represented at a point in time, versus where they are in hindsight now is many of the ideas from both become absorbed into mainstream culture. And no matter how radical they were in certain forms, the version that gets absorbed, or as a result of that absorption over time, that original intent and maybe like political potency, we could even say power, loses its edge. All right, and so it's softened from its original meaning. Its power is softened, and arguably its power is siphoned. Right? Think about something like how we've here's a term I used in part one. We've appropriated the style of something like punk, and when it becomes part of maybe more of that homogenized culture, that consumer culture, even it loses its edge, right? And makes it difficult for that political meaning, or maybe that ideological meaning to resonate as clearly. Denisi stated that pop culture spreads so easily due to mass communication technologies and mass media. Page 8. Is it fair to say that these technologies improve the spread of popular culture? It is fair to say that. I'm sorry. Is it fair to say that as these technologies improve the spread of popular culture, they reduce the time in which they remain popular? It seems as if things go viral for a short amount of time before something new pops up. They can this process can absolutely reduce the time that a thing remains popular, but that's not a guarantee. Okay, so we can lessen the either or approach to understanding it, but definitely the ability of a thing to remain popular faces many challenges, and there's various factors involved. The main one we see today is there is a reduction due to an increased competition. So let's take a TV show, for example. And TV shows that were incredibly popular 25 years ago, 50 years ago, were because more people would watch it, and there were fewer other options. But the more options we have, the more fragmented the audience or the consumer is. And that's at a mass level, meaning like some people over here, some people over here, some people over here. But it also stands for some of my attention here, some of my attention over here, some of my attention over there. And so maybe I'm not going to spend as much time invested in that artifact. And so while I just use the example of television, we can easily think about maybe something like a clothing company, right? Or a restaurant chain. And how do you maintain in an age of hyper competition, right, where it's just everywhere? And that's the dance of life in our current society. And I think it's increasingly complicated. Let's take 2020 as a max case study of when there's increased competition, but suddenly consumer scarcity, because people have many millions have removed themselves from that active consumer culture equation. Now what happens? And now how do you keep going? and I don't have the answers for that. I mean, that should be the entire business class that's offered and active and going right now. Yeah, sounds good. All right, let's take another break, and we'll come back with more of your questions in our COM 2143 digital lecture series.